And here is Preston.
Hey everyone, great to see you.
Hey, how are you doing?
Excellent. So please carry on. Welcome back to the program, Preston.
Yes, nice
Thank
to
you
have
so
you
much.
back.
I appreciate you guys having me.
Well, Preston, we've just been on with Peter Toole from the WRC, and obviously some huge changes in the World Rally Championship for 2022. Just want to start with you looking at, just like the WRC, you're just a few weeks away from the end of your 2021 season. You've got a few more weeks to prepare relative to the WRC before you get into snowdrift mode and the start of the national championship in 2022. But you've had a couple of not quite a couple of years in the job now. Where do you see the ARA, the American Rally Association, and the national championship at the moment? How does it sort of sit with you in terms of where it is and where it's going?
Yeah, of course. You know, the off season seems to get shorter and shorter every year as we add more events to the calendar. So our last event is actually happening this weekend in Minnesota, a smaller regional event. But, you know, of course, the difference with our series, say, compared to the WRC is we handle pretty much almost 20 events in the US, anything from small regional races all the way up to our full national calendar. So, you know, our challenges are a little bit different, and so really it's a multifaceted approach. You know, the way I look at the smaller regional events compared to the national events, you know, for the national events, it's using the FIA and the WRC as you know, kind of where we want to be, and obviously it's a long journey to get anywhere close to that, but really that's about the higher level competition in terms of things like the R5 cars or the Rally 2 cars now, of course, and certainly the top level of our sport here in the US, which is the open four-wheel drive. You know, for us, the unique challenge is being able to gear the series to handle not only that level of competition, but also the smaller grassroots, since they're under our same banner.
Because that's a very good point. For guys who maybe follow ARA on a sort of more not so in-depth level, they're seeing Travis Pastrana, they're seeing Ken Block, they're seeing Brandon Semenuk, and they're seeing, you know, the factory Subarus. But the thing that really makes the championship, obviously, is the grassroots, the privateer competitors. So when you're basically looking at events and looking at formats, how do you manage to basically cover the bases for everybody, make it enough for Subaru to sort of you know, realize that their investment and the profile is what it should be, but for the competitors who are basically working on cars in garages, and you know, the national championship really is the holy grail. How do you make it work for everybody?
Yeah, I think the important thing is really defining the expectations for everyone. So not only our expectations of events and the national series, but also for competitors, sponsors, and you know, from the top teams, as you mentioned, Subaru, down to the guys just getting started in their garage. And you know, our approach to national events, of course, is the show's a bit bigger and the technology we're using is a bit more cutting edge. So of course, a big addition for our series this year was the implementation of Rally Safe, not only from tracking perspective, which for us was a big boost to the safety of the sport, but also using their system for timing and scoring, which really kind of revolutionized how we handle that. That of course is a premium system with its capabilities, but also its price tag. So that's not something that we're going to use, say, at the smaller regional events. But obviously something we're able to do at the national. So, you know, in terms of looking at events, really we're looking at quality of the organization, quality of the roads, the amount of stage miles we're able to get. So there's kind of a working checklist, if you will. But again, that's us with events going, you know, here's our expectations, here's what we want to see, and able to pick the national events from that.
And the 2022 calendar has certainly, after the challenges of 2020 and 2021, has got more of a familiar feel. We start off with a 2-day snowdrift. We have our West Coast swing with Olympus and with Oregon. In terms of what you've got next year, and in terms of finishing as well with Lake Superior. Is that for you the optimum in terms of locations, in terms of the flow of the season?
The US, of course, is a very big place. And so we really want to be able to represent our country in its entirety when we're looking at events. Being able to have, like you say, the West Coast swing with Oregon Olympus is great for our series. We've obviously got a lot of competitors out that direction as well. And the fact that we run from Maine, which is as far northeast as you can get in the US, and all the way as far west as we can get with, say, Portland or Olympus, I think we've got good representation. The great thing that I like to see is we do have new events that we're bringing onto the calendar this year. The Bristol Rally, which started a couple years ago at this point, we're able to bring that onto the ARA calendar, and I think that's an event that's got a lot of potential. It's in an area where there's a ton of US motorsports, but rally, for one reason or another, is still in the process of kind of taking off and gaining traction on a larger level. And I think those are the types of areas we really have to look at, where we can bring not only rally fans into the sport, but people that are fans of motorsport that maybe don't know about rally.
Now, you said in the past that you view the way American fans interact with rallying as being very different to the way, for instance, European fans interact. As you say, European fans will head off to the most remote place, a bit like sort of following the Tour de France. They'll head off into the boonies and make a weekend of it. Whereas maybe that's not quite the culture over here. Now, the fact that you, for instance, brought in the new tracking system, how are you sort of building up that sort of interaction with fans, that sort of virtual experience?
Yeah, of course, our reach is always going to be larger when you can do anything virtually. We can have at our big events, 5,000 plus fans on site, but reach 50 to 100,000 people online. And so kind of investing in the technology, which I kind of implemented coming in and was a big point for me coming as the lead of the series. It's making that virtual experience better. Of course, something like the tracking system is a big benefit for that, because you can see where the cars are on the course. And granted, it's a little bit following dots on the screen, but even something as simple as being able to watch the competition unfold pretty much live, with stage times and where the gaps are and where the battles are, that was not something that you could really do in our sport easily until this year. And so really following that trend and pushing so that the more casual fan is able to find the information, learn about the teams, learn about the drivers. I really want to find ways so that we can engage and keep people interested. So my wife has even complained in the past that I'm the one competing and she can't even find anything about the race or what I'm doing. So I'm really trying to change that trend.
Because for me, rallying is one of those sports that as soon as you actually are exposed to it, you get it, you're hooked, you're a rally fan. Yeah. It seems as well in the States that we have such an audience that is ready to be receptive to it. When you look at everything from an incredible demographic with a drifting scene, with a tuning scene, with time attack, the fact that we do have a culture of off-road racing, it seems that rallying is almost like, if you haven't discovered it, it ticks all of those boxes and more besides. I mean, getting the message out there, I think, is one of the biggest things as to what rallying does offer to a motorsports fan.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I am very biased, but I think rally is one of the most exciting motorsports out there. Not only from a car technology standpoint, and we're seeing, of course, the WRC kind of getting on the cutting edge with running hybrids at the top end of their series, but obviously from the action. Everyone likes a car sideways throwing a big rooster tail in the dirt, and it's kind of converting some of those other fans, as you mentioned, of the off-roading series, or I'm actually at the Nitro Rallycross this weekend, and seeing the fans that they're trying to reach is kind of a similar thing that we're trying to do, where we know we have our core fan base in rally fans, but it's how do we bring in the NASCAR fans, the IndyCar fans, the desert fans, as of course is maybe an easier transition for us. But for one reason or another, the reach hasn't been great in the past, and rally in the US has stayed mainly grassroots with some level of expansion, up and down, and you're always going to have peaks and valleys. And so for me, we're kind of in the midst of a peak right now, and it's maintaining it so that when that next valley comes, it's not as far down, and we can go even higher the next time.
One of the great things about US rallying is how flexible it is in terms of what you compete with. There are some great one-off cars competed in ARA. And I know that in a peripheral way, I was involved in something last year where we actually brought with the guys from the Toyota R&D team in Michigan, we actually brought a Prius onto the Olympus rally. Obviously, it didn't run as a full competing car, but still the fact that you guys were so open and receptive to it coming on. How do you sort of see the future in terms of whether people do want to run hybrids in these classes, how you actually prepare for the future, keep your level of this is what makes ARA different, but also align yourself with the bigger world scene? That was a lot of questions. Sorry about that, Preston.
We'll see if I can cover it all. Really, I think at its core, as you said, US Rally is in a little different place because of so many unique cars and the character that we have. You look at cars up and down our field, and you have a car like, say, Pat Morrow's, which is a V8 Chevy Sonic, which is a crazy car, all the way down to the grassroots guys that are, say, putting LS engines into RX-7s and just about everything these days. But I think that's so much a character of rally in the US that I really want to make sure that I can continue to embrace that. On the flip side, I think to gain some relevance within the international competition, we do need to embrace some of what the FIA is doing. And so, of course, that's the biggest challenge for us, to be able to kind of adopt and promote some of the FIA classifications. We have the RC2 class here in ARA, which does that. It's the Rally 2 cars, and we actually had an R4 car come up from Argentina that's planning on doing the season next year. So it's being able to promote those types of cars, and I think another important facet of it is US drivers kind of coming up and learning in the more FIA style cars, because it'll make them more relevant if they do want to go compete internationally. And again, it's just that multifaceted approach of, I really want to leave the grassroots so that they can play and tinker and still build stuff in their garage, while still be able to increase the level of competition within those FIA classes, and seeing things like the Rally 3 cars, coming in the last couple of years within the FIA. Rumor is I'm going to see a couple of those in our series this year. And so it's how am I able to take those cars, class them within our series, and promote them so that we can get young drivers into them and move up.
That's an interesting point as well about young American talents and being able to promote that within ARA. Case in point, Sean Johnson in the WRC, in WRC2. Now, he made the move. Obviously, he had experience of competing in Europe with sports cars, but he made the jump straight to Europe. Do you see it where the last couple of years we've had it where Oliver Solberg has come across to ARA for experience? We've obviously got the Irish contingent has been over in a big way in recent years. Do you see a more sort of logical progression where, for instance, young American drivers can choose ARA and know the point where they would jump off into one of the WRC or ERC levels?
Yeah, that's something that I really want to do, and we're starting to see glimpses of that. As you say, it's right now maybe more international drivers coming over to our series and competing for, say, a season or a few events and going back, which I love to see. It does nothing but brings the level of competition up for our series, which at the end of the day, everyone wants to see good close racing, and that's part of it. Really what I would like to do, and what we're trying to work towards, is getting a homegrown driver to kind of make that transition. And we haven't seen that yet. You know, obviously Sean Johnson's a great ambassador for the sport and kind of a US connection for us. But the reality is he never competed in the US. And so it's being able to bridge that gap to more international competition, because that also increases the visibility for our series as a whole as well.
Speaking to Peter Toole before you, Preston, he obviously made great play on how important the US market is to the WRC, and you know, in terms of it being a fingers crossed future destination. How would you, if the WRC came to the US, how would that sort of work with you in terms of leverage, in terms of profile, and in terms of, for instance, just simple logistics of being able to supply, you know, the rest of the field or whatever? Have you thought about that?
Yeah, you know, it's a very complicated proposition. You know, to bring an event the level of the WRC to the US is a challenge for not only them, but also for us. As you mentioned, they're going to be using a lot of US resources, you know, volunteers, and so finding a location and building up. I mean, even something as simple as marshals that know how FIA controls work. You know, that's a long-term problem that needs to be solved. And as interest is kind of picking up momentum in the US to do that, you know, it's working with their teams to find a location, find the right organization team, and putting them in place so that they can have a successful event. You know, for our series, you know, anything the WRC is going to do, we want to be involved with, just because of the resources that the FIA and the WRC have is multi times higher than anything I have in the US. So being able to leverage their experience for our teams would be very beneficial as well.
Beyond Subaru, which has obviously been a huge supporter and a huge presence in American rallying for so many years, are you getting any vibes from, for instance, Hyundai, for instance, Ford in the USA, Toyota, where they are seeing a value proposition in maybe becoming involved in American rallying beyond the WRC?
We've had some surface level talks. I think the challenge is you look at the models that are used in the FIA and the WRC, and they're just not cars that are sold or used in the US. And I think that's kind of the biggest challenge we have right now. And I don't mean cars used in competition. I mean the models are just not sold in the US. And so obviously the promotion would look a little bit different. So you know, there may be some opportunity for things like the Rally 2 cars to come and compete in the US, and obviously we're more than accommodating for that, and so that's really what we would be working for. I think for them to build one-off open class cars to our series now is unrealistic, and so that's why, you know, we're trying to figure out the direction of the series, or I should say we're working on the direction of the series, to make it more interesting and more viable for manufacturers or high level sponsors. And part of that is crafting the rule set, you know, for the next, call it 2 to 5 years. So
one of the things you touched on there was volunteers and marshals. And obviously one of the great things about rallying is it isn't just drivers. That there are so many ways. Well, you as a co-driver and a pretty successful one, who then obviously went into team management before coming into, you know, the bigger picture championship management. Just give us an idea of how people can get involved in rallying at the local and at the national level in the States.
It's a bit of a cliche, but we always say volunteers have the best seat in the house. But you know, that's really true. Anything from you know, working a start line and seeing the cars launch and actually really get an understanding of how how fast the acceleration is on even dirt, or marshaling a position on a stage is a great opportunity to see the cars go by as well. As far as opportunities, all of the events need volunteers. Our average national event uses about 350 volunteers, so it's a pretty big undertaking. And really to find how and where you need to do that is to look at our schedule, the ARA schedule on our website, or find local events near you, but really that's going to be a good resource. From there, we of course have all the links and everything to the individual events, and they do volunteer signups anywhere from about 6 to 2 months in advance. The nice thing, and one of the things we're working on this year, is it can be intimidating to be a volunteer coming in, especially if you've never seen a rally before. And so one of the things we're working on is really upping our level of volunteer training we do on a series-wide level, rather than being too reliant on the events themselves, because the event organizers are volunteers as well, and they obviously have to prioritize making sure the event happens. So for us, being able to have some type of consistent training across volunteers, is another thing that I've really seen an opportunity for. So it's something in our very short off season we're trying to put together.
I just saw a question come in there from Don Taylor asking about the vexed question of liability and insurance when it comes to rallying.
Yeah.
And I know that when I first moved across to the States, I realized that everything and everybody was worth suing for something. How big an issue is liability and insurance?
US is pretty much the most litigious nation in the world. That's the reality of the world that we live in. And so there's only a handful of players in motorsport insurance in the US. And even past that, rally being such a unique challenge that it is on normally open public roads, difficult to cordon off so that people can't access it, that's always going to be a challenge. But for us, it's really working with the events, making sure the safety planning that we do is top notch, and that me and my team can lend our experience to create an event and a package that is at least something to be insured. That's pretty much step one. From there, we have the benefit of being a part of USAC, which is a very large sanctioning body in the US. And so of course we're able to leverage their resources, since our series is actually owned by them, to be able to get insurance through their carrier and working towards that. Really long term, it's making sure the events can be run safely, that we don't have incidents, and kind of the overarching one is always spectators. We all want spectators there, and they really create excitement for drivers and the teams, but at the same time, that's the biggest liability that we have from a racing series. So it's how we handle that. As far as going state by state, the process is very, very similar, and really, because we're dealing with so many different road owners, or I should say the events are dealing with different road owners, their requirements kind of vary state to state, and or sometimes even stage to stage. So it's just us working with events and making sure whatever they need in terms of coverage, or what their road owners are looking for, that we work with their teams and make sure it happens so that we can keep having events.
You mentioned USAC there, and USAC obviously being the sanctioning body. To begin with, that seemed a little bit of a left field choice, but that seems to be working remarkably well. Just tell us a little bit about the background and, well, USAC as a sanctioning body for a rally series.
Yeah. If you look at history long enough, ARA is a spinoff of a spinoff. Of course, Rally America came into existence in the mid 2000s, and ARA came into existence in 2017. As a spinoff from Rally America. So the big benefit we have when USAC ultimately purchased the series or took it over was, again, the resources that they can offer. Rally being kind of that in between grassroots and professional level motorsport, it's difficult to get operating budgets, when all the events are kind of individually put together, and creating that universal experience between all of our events really took somebody coming in and being able to oversee every event. And what I appreciate with USAC is we have access to their resources, whether it's insurance, or they were a big part on why we could bring Rally Safe in this year. But other than that, they really let us operate pretty autonomously. They understand that me and my team are the experts when it comes to rally, and so fortunately they really don't try and steer the direction of the series or try and make any decisions regarding competition, and kind of leave that up to us, which I really appreciate.
That does sound like the perfect situation. Being left alone is good with me. But
yeah.
So just to close then, let me think. You've got 11 weeks until Snowdrift. 10 weeks, 11 weeks.
Yeah.
Just set the scene for 2022. We've got Travis Pastrana, the overall champ from 2021. We're back to 2 days of Snowdrift. The quirk of Snowdrift being it's up there in the frozen north of Michigan, but no studs allowed.
Right. Yeah. That's the departure from a lot of snow rallies internationally, right?
So what are your thoughts on 2022? What will constitute another year of progress, a successful 22 for you?
We were so fortunate coming out of 2020, which of course was a challenge for everyone. But we carried a lot of momentum coming into 2021 and had a pretty good fight for the championship for the whole year between Subaru and Barry McKenna with his new car that he brought over. But even down to the RC2 class I've talked about before, it came down to the final race, pretty much winner take all for that class. So what we're looking at is that level of competition continuing through the season. We've got I think 18 events confirmed for 2022, 9 of them being our national championship. And so it's really just helping those events, promoting them, growing the sport. And for us, I mentioned the R4 from that Argentinian team coming over. And so
yes.
With us getting more international interest, I only expect competition to be better for 2022. And that's up and down the field. We also had a year where we had at least near a record number of new drivers come into the sport. So it's really helping and fostering that side of it as well. Of course, we started the conversation with so much going on at the national and the grassroots level for our series. And so at the end of the day, it's still being able to focus on those two, not necessarily separately, but really with different goals and intentions in mind.
And Preston, once a co-driver, always a co-driver. Any plans to get into that seat again in the near future? Yeah,
so I was looking at my competition history a couple of weeks ago, actually, and 2021 was the first time I didn't compete in something like 14 years or something like that. So I would love to get back in a car for 2022. At the end of the day, my priority is growing and fostering the sport. And if maybe I can sneak a race in, I certainly will try. Whether it's driving or co-driving. Now that I'm not racing full time, then I have no problem going out and racing and getting 7th place in class. Maybe not as a co-driver, my expectations are different, but as a driver, it's more fun. But I understand my limits.
Hey, well, we will leave you to get back to preparing for the new season. That's, as always, Preston, some fascinating insight from a guy who knows all aspects of the sport. And yeah, really appreciate that. ARA is in good hands with you and the rest of the team.
Well, thank you so much.
Proper work.
Yeah, I appreciate the kind words, and again, thank you to the EPARTRADE team for having me on, and it's been a pleasure.
Of course, and keep up the great job, and we love rally as well. So.
The concept for EPARTRADE is basically, in my opinion, there's a big hole in the internet. So the internet started many years ago, but there's never been an online business community for racers on the World Wide Web. The need for EPARTRADE is actually quite obvious Basically, people in the business of auto racing need a place online to hang out and to get their problems solved.
It's extremely simple for a buyer or for a supplier to interact on the platform. The first thing you need to do is sign in, which is free. And the second thing is, when you see a product that you're interested in, all you need to do is click on request more information. If it's a company, you click on request more information, and then from there, it is forwarded directly to the buyer or to the supplier.
You can go to EPARTRADE.com, you become part of a community of businesses in racing, and it makes sourcing products much easier than just on the internet or using Google.
At EPARTRADE, there is no e-commerce. It's literally a connection just like at a trade show. So now, any time of the year, a buyer could reach out to a supplier through an email.
More than that, it's a place to go just to keep current every day. So it's a good place to start your workday in your racing business or in your offices of your professional race team. And you know you're current when it comes to new technology, industry news, technical papers, technical videos, all of that and more. We're not looking for a million hits per day. All we want is people who are really the volume buyers of racing products in the racing industry to be part of the little world of EPARTRADE. We have racing businesses participating from around the world. So you get suppliers from around the world, you get buyers from around the world.
EPARTRADE really eliminates having to travel, closing down your shop. Now you have a place to showcase globally your racing product and technology.
There are two types of people, racers and everyone else. Racer Magazine is for those who believe that racing is a way of life. Racer embodies the excellence that defines a sport driven by passion, courage, and ingenuity. Get 1 year of both Racer's print and digital edition for only $39 with instant access to our entire digital issue archive. Subscribe now at info.racer.com.